What's up, everybody? Welcome back to In Search of Answers, the show where you guys ask me questions and I do my very best to answer them. A reminder, if you would like to ask a question for me to potentially answer here on the show, there's two ways you can do that. One, if you're a patron, you can head over to Patreon, find the listing for this episode over there. There will be a link to a form inside of that posting on Patreon, which you can fill out, and that gets you priority access to having your question answered here on the show. Otherwise, you can just leave a comment here on YouTube, and I will do my best to get to pretty much every question that people ask. I'm trying to do my best to answer as many of them as I can. So we're going to get into some questions here today as well. But first, I want to take a little time to sort of expand a little bit more on what I was talking about last week regarding banning add-ons and why I think that's not really the approach that Blizzard should take to resolve this situation. Because there definitely is very much an issue. I do agree that it feels like, especially at super top end rating, if you're not using add-ons to basically tell you what's going on in a fight at any given moment in time, it does feel like you sort of fall behind. It's kind of necessary to have something that's just keeping you more in the loop of what's happening in those fights. And I do agree with that. However, it's not quite as simple as just quote unquote banning add-ons, right? It's not quite the same as just saying, oh, just ban those add-ons. In fact, a lot of people were saying, well, I don't mind the cosmetic add-ons. I don't mind the add-ons that just change how things look, or the more like quality of life help.
So my question, okay, so I'm going to listen to what you have to say, but I'm just curious. Like, if the cosmetic add-ons are fine, then why don't we just integrate them into the game? Like, why doesn't Blizzard just say, okay, I'm going to take this add-on, let's say LVUI, and I'm going to integrate something that's like that so that you can mask and change your stuff in game. It's something that's built in, right? I feel like add-ons, this is my overall statement for add-ons. I feel like add-ons make developers lazy, right? That's how I feel, personally.
For add-ons, like, bag add-ons and so on and so forth. What they really don't like, and what everyone, at least from what I was seeing, is sort of talking about here, are the add-ons like DBM, Bigwigs, Weak Auras, those sort of combat add-ons that really change up how you approach the gameplay, or at least facilitate a lot your ability to tell what's going on in a fight and react to things that are going on around you. And Rika, I'm going to call out this comment from Rika because they really sort of hit the nail on the head in terms of the issue with just banning those add-ons. So Rika said, I mostly dislike combat add-ons. General UI stuff I'm fine with. I just don't know exactly where you draw the line from an API perspective to keep them functional. And like I said, therein lies the rub, as it were. This kind of hits the issue directly on the head. Blizzard doesn't really have a way to just straight up ban an add-on, right? Like it's not like the Steam marketplace where they can say, okay, this mod is no longer able to be installed. We've pulled it from the marketplace, so you can't get it anymore. And you can't install it anymore. They don't have that sort of ability. Add-ons are just files that you drop in a folder in WoW, and unless they were to just completely from the top down change how add-ons are distributed and added into WoW, which I don't see that happening, they really don't have a way to prevent you from installing an add-on. They can theoretically detect add-ons and say that this add-on, oh, we saw that this person was running this add-on, and so now we'll ban them from the game. And I know that's something that they've occasionally done in the past for like add-ons that were utilized to like help with like direct hacks and stuff, right? Like things that were like automatically allowing you to interrupt certain kicks or certain spells and so on in PvP, for example. That was something that they've been able to detect that in the past. But the problem,
people use macros now. There's auto kick macros that you can spam that will cancel and not kick until someone's casting. So that has been relegated to macros, from what I understand, unless it's been fixed too.
The problem with that is it's sort of just an arms race, really. It's the sort of thing where, yeah, sure, they can detect this add-on, but then all it takes is that you change a few things about that add-on, you just reinstall it, you change the name, you change a few of the source files around, and now their detection doesn't work anymore. So that's not really feasible in a long-term capacity either. In fact, that's the sort of thing that would just result in a lot of the top-end guilds going back to hiding their streams and not streaming the World First Race anymore, because you change a few things about that add-on, you just reinstall it, you change the name, you change a few of the source files around, and now their detection doesn't work anymore. So that's not really feasible in a long-term capacity either. In fact, that's the sort of thing that would just result in a lot of the top-end guilds going back to hiding their streams and not streaming the World First Race anymore, because they would be more worried about like, oh, we're going to use these add-ons because we want to get this advantage. Like it doesn't take away the ability for them to use that advantage. It just makes it something that they want to be kind of sneaky about. And that's just, they'll just be messy in every single way. And you might say, well, why would they stop streaming this if they didn't want to use this? And there's a whole separate topic to get into about the mindset of the extreme top end raider in that case. Realistically, what would happen is we would go right back to the old days of everyone's hiding their streams all the time because they don't want to accidentally give away an advantage. I don't think that's a path that's worth going down. And just straight up banning them through the EULA as a result is not really a feat.
I don't think we're ever going to go back to that, to not showing screens on the world race to world first. I'm just gonna say it. I think that like overall, it's more beneficial for them to show it because it's making them more money. I think that the race to world first makes them more money than it ever has. And if you go back to not showing your screen ever, people will just literally not like they won't be able to maintain the amount of income they make now.
Feasible option, especially for a lot of these add-ons that are so widespread and so genuinely just so easily replicated. Because again, these add-ons aren't really doing anything that is out of the ordinary. They're not really doing anything that every other add-on doesn't do. And that's the biggest problem. So historically, how Blizzard has banned add-ons in the past, things like AVR, way back in the day, things like decursive or the like emergency monitor healer add-ons that just let you spam click on one thing to heal whoever needed the most healing at that given moment in time. Way back in the vanilla WoW days on those last two at least. The way that those have been banned in the past is by disabling some portion of the API that was providing them with information that was necessary for that add-on to function, but wasn't used by most other legitimate add-ons. AVR is a great example of this one just because it's really straightforward and easy to describe. When AVR was banned and AVRE was banned, if you remember, this was back during the Wrath of the Lich King days. There was an add-on that would display things on the ground in-game. Like it was almost an overlay that looked on the ground in-game and said, okay, this explosion is going to happen over here. So there's now a zone over there that says don't stand in this. And if you got close to it, it would like change perspective and everything. So it looked like it was just being directly what's the word I'm looking for? Directly projected onto the game world itself. But the way it had to do that was by doing a whole bunch of like mathematical and like geometrical calculations based on where your camera was looking. So Blizzard went and said, okay, well, we can't really remove the ability for an add-on to do math. That's some real basic stuff. We can't really remove the ability for an add-on to display things. That's also some real basic stuff. But what we can do is remove the ability for an add-on to know which direction the camera is facing. So that's more or less what they did, is they went in and they said, okay, now if you move, as you move around, this add-on no longer knows what exactly you're looking at. This add-on no longer knows exactly where your camera is facing. So these overlays don't work anymore because they can't actually triangulate the position to display this thing on the screen so that it looks like it's part of the environment. Okay. Other examples, the decursive and the emergency monitor from way back in the OG vanilla days that I just mentioned. The way that Blizzard disabled those was by making it so that add-ons during combat could not choose a target for a spell for you. That's also why, like Pally Power, for example, nowadays, Pally Power, even in class.
And decursive now is different too. Decursive has it's like a separate set of raid frames. Like you have your own special raid frames, but then you have also decursive raid frames. And you just click on whatever box lights up, pretty much.
Like these days, in Season of Discovery, for example, once you're in combat, you can no longer just right-click on the same icon over and over again to buff your whole raid. You then have to manually cast it on those individual people. That's because what they did was make it so that an add-on could not determine the target of your spell for you or determine what spell to cast for you once you're in game. So that was, or once you're in combat, excuse me. So those are a couple of ways that they've banned add-ons in the past, and they've blocked add-ons by finding things that they just didn't want your add-on to be able to do, that they could then just remove that functionality from the API or block that functionality under certain situations that then didn't really break anything else. The problem is add-ons like DBM, add-ons like Weak Auras, and so on, they aren't doing anything crazy. They aren't doing anything that's more than just show a thing on screen, do some math, maybe play a sound. Like that's literally all they're doing. So like, for example, say you have an encounter and every 30 seconds, the boss is going like from the start of the encounter, every 30 seconds, the boss is going to do some sort of raid wide damage thing. And you want to have the ability for You're the developer of a boss add-on, and you want to have the ability to announce to players this thing is about to happen. All you need in terms of information to do that is to know that combat has started. This mob is in combat, so therefore you can determine what boss mod to actually load. You need to know, and that's it. That's literally it. That's all you need to know. You need to know that you're in combat with this boss. So when the combat starts, it then just starts a timer. That's just a basic Lua function. And anyone who's spent any time in software development will tell you that banning the ability for a add-on to tell time is a very bad idea. That's not going to work. The ability to...
So, like, I'm not trying to, like, derail this conversation because I really like hearing his insight into how add-ons work, but, like, the more he talks about them, I'm like, well, okay, well, the only option is to ban all add-ons. If you're saying that, for the most part, like, the most basic of functions is what dictates having, like, a DBM, right, for example, then, like, there is, like, no other option than to just ban all add-ons, right?
Have an add-on delay or have any sort of function delay what it's doing by a certain amount of time is pretty much mandatory for the majority of add-ons that exist out there. So that's off the table. Can't ban the ability for add-ons to say in this amount of time do a thing, right? Can't ban the ability to display things on screen because then that ruins all the cosmetic add-ons that people are saying that they're fine with. You can't, like, if you were to ban the ability for DBM to pop up a little icon with a progress bar next to it, you have also now banned the ability for it to change how your unit frames look, or for it to put a different icon when you're out of combat for whatever other flavor reason that you want to have it, or for it to, like, make your health bars look like the Diablo orbs or whatever. Like, you can't block the ability for an add-on to show things. That doesn't work. And you can't reasonably block the ability for an add-on to know what you're in combat with. Like, there's probably some, like, under the hood things that they could do if they really wanted to, but all that would require is that the add-on developers then have to jump through a couple extra hoops to figure out what you're in combat with, and that wouldn't be that big of a deal regardless. So that's just one example. Other things like, okay, the boss just did this shout in game, which means they're about to cast this spell, or the boss is now casting this spell. Like, you could not reasonably block the ability for an add-on to know that a spell is being cast, because again, those cosmetic add-ons, like things that change how your cast bar looks, things that change how your unit frames look, and so on, they need to know that information as well. All of this information is stuff that the cosmetic add-ons need to function, and in some cases, they need it even more than what these add-ons actually require.
Sure, but, like, okay, so the whole discussion here is supposed to be, like, whether or not you should ban add-ons. And, like, if you don't ban add-ons, what is going to continue to happen is Blizzard is not going to detail mechanics correctly to the player, and it's going to make add-ons more and more and more needed. And that's clear with things like Among Us. There's an Among Us boss. Like, there's plenty of bosses that, like, Blizzard didn't think too hard, and they were just like, hey, you know, they'll figure an add-on out for it. And it became clear that, you know, like, what Chrome Rock, I think his name was, is like a huge ass, there's this big ass fucking ogre ass boss in not Blackrock Foundry, Hellfire Citadel, the new one. And I think it's like the fourth boss or the third boss, depending on how you go. You kill the first two bosses, then you have three options. You go left and take out a council fight and then kill Rog, and then to the right, I think his name is Cormrock or whatever. And it's this big ass guy, but on Mythic, like, he spawns out a bunch of puddles. And there's, like, fucking no way to really set up your puddles unless you have an add-on. And we had to use a WeakOR for that to figure out where the fuck we needed to go. And Blizzard doesn't really think when they make shit. They, like, go, their brain, they go, okay, we'll do this mechanic, the player base will fix the rest of it. And that's not how it should go. Blizzard should do a thing, test a thing, go, okay, cool, you can do this without add-ons fairly easy, very simply. Awesome, let's throw it out. Like, don't go, oh, we're gonna make this, we can't beat it ourselves. Because I feel like most of the time Blizzard makes shit, they can't do it. They can't actually do the fight. Like, it's the only explanation I have for the fact that, like, we have the top tier guilds go out and they do a fight and they can't fucking beat the fight. Like, there's no way anyone in Blizzard is as good as, like, Liquid, or as good as, like, Limit, or as good as, like, Method, or as good as, like, Echo, or any of these other big guilds. They're not that good. You're telling me that, like, every time you throw out a boss encounter, it's tested? It's not. They just throw out shit and expect us to figure out the rest of it. And if it was simplified and there weren't add-ons, Blizzard would have an easier time testing out their own products in general, which is the whole reason when people say banning add-ons is the only solution, because if we don't ban add-ons, it will just continue to be fucked, right? But if you can, I don't know, maybe do like an add-on PTR, where add-ons can only be on this PTR, people can test and make add-ons for the game, and then Blizzard can integrate them in over time to the live game so that they are integrated add-ons. They're no longer add-ons, they are integrated into the game. So no longer do we have to go get LVUI, we have Blizzard special UIs, or whatever the fuck. And you can just make your shit look like LVUI, but it's like specially made by Blizzard. Like, and I feel like that's how literally it should work. You should have a add-on beta test thing, server, kind of like PTR, where people can go and make add-ons to fix problems that they see, and then Blizzard can integrate them. Because that would probably fix most of the UI problems we have. Probably fix most of the problems to people who have disabilities who can't play the game. They can't play the game, so they go out and get an add-on to fix the fact that they can't play the game because they have a disability. There's people who play World of Warcraft with their eyes. Like, because they have add-ons for it that they've used to make it work with other programs. And that's fucking cool, but Blizzard should be integrating that into their game baseline, right? It shouldn't just be an add-on or an add-on developer's responsibility to help disabled people play a video game. My opinion.
These combat-focused add-ons actually require. So, cosmetic action add-ons, in a lot of ways, they're really just calling the same functions that the combat add-ons call. So you can't really realistically block those at an API level. And this, of course, by the way, is not even getting into the concept of accessibility here. Like right now, I'm just talking about stuff where you don't want to block the ability to change how your unit frame
accessibility
looks
is probably the only concern.
It is genuinely, I saw some people saying, well, it's not really about accessibility. It's about making the game too easy. Like, no, it is genuinely an accessibility issue. Like, I'll use myself as an example. Part of the reason that I like to use weak auras is, especially in Classic, I have a really hard time, like my peripheral vision, you might be able to tell I wear glasses. My peripheral vision at like the corners of my screen is not great. I don't really have the ability to reliably notice when I have gotten a debuff, right? Like,
right. The UI needs to be improved. That has nothing to do with accessibility. I mean, it does, but like, that's a UI improvement that Blizzard needs to do, and we're just making them lazy by doing what we do, right? Like they have less incentive to make us able to do things. They're less incentivized to fix problems that have been in the game for tens of years because they know that someone in the community will fix it, which is the point that I think a lot of people make, but don't harp on enough.
Like, especially when it's like just kind of off in the corner and there's so much else that's going on up over there already anyway, it just gets lost and I don't notice that I have received a specific debuff unless it's a part of the fight where I know that I should be looking for it. So unless I'm staring at that corner of the screen, I probably don't notice. So the first boss in Black Fathom Deeps, for example, I ended up putting a weak aura together so that it would pop up with an icon in the middle of my screen instead of just up in the corner that says I have this debuff. Now you might say, well, now that's just playing the game for you. But for me, it was genuinely an accessibility thing. Like,
no, it's just a UI issue. It's just a UI issue. Blizzard needs to make shit more readily apparent when things happen. Like, that's not Blizzard, or that's not the game, the UI playing the game for you. He's right. It's an accessibility thing, but it's also something that Blizzard should fix. Like, I shouldn't be looking for a fucking debuff off in Kansas off to the right. No one should. It should be very readily apparent either on your character. Oh, you're on fire now. You can clearly see your whole body is engulfed in green flame. Well, that means you have an STD. Take the STD off to the coast. There's a water fountain over here. Clean off the STD. Do it fast, quick. Like it should be a lot more readily apparent than, oh, you have a debuff that doesn't change the way your character looks, and there's no way to know unless you look off to the right, and you're looking off onto the fucking East Coast up in Maine is the only way you can fucking decide whether or not you have a debuff or not. That shouldn't be a thing. It shouldn't be a thing. There should be things that are readily, very blatantly apparent. I don't care if you have to throw the fucking debuff in the center of the screen that says, oh, you have this debuff, and here's a description for it if you hover over it. Oh shit, I need to get over to this thing. Like, that's how learning processes work. Like, whoever the fuck made the base UI for World of Warcraft and decided to put the debuffs off to the right and the healing and HP up to the top left with your fucking person you're attacking top left next to you, and then your fucking map off to the top right, and then all assortments of debuffs and buffs on the top right. Like, you're absolutely fucking stupid. Like, whoever did that. Like, it's actually the dumbest thing ever. There's a reason why most people who get an add-on to tweak UI change it so that all that shit's in the center. Anyone with half a brain cell puts half that shit in the center. Because it's supposed to be in the center. Okay?
Even with the swirly graphic that looked exactly like Evocation, for some reason they used one that looked...
Yeah, you can use it. You can move those in the default UI now, right? But you couldn't before. Can you move it in the default UI in Classic Season of Discovery? Because he's talking about Season of Discovery right now. You can? Well, then he's just fucking stupid.
Exactly like a spell that mages were using constantly. It looked like Evocation. I just was not noticing this debuff going out in the middle of combat when I'm trying to do all of my rotation and everything. So, especially in melee as well. Like I was playing a feral.
Well, actually, no, that's not true. He's not just stupid. Because there's a differentiation between important debuffs and non-important debuffs, and maybe he's talking about the differentiation between the two. So maybe he wants to track certain debuffs and not that. It should still be a function in the UI. The UI should still have that function on a boss by boss basis. Like, oh, boss by boss, there's a set of UIs, set of debuffs you can check and uncheck, and then it'll show up in a certain place for you. Like, that should happen. So I don't know if that's what he meant, but if that's what he meant, then he's not stupid. But if it's not what he meant, you are stupid.
Do it at the time, and it was really hard for me to tell what was going on. So that's why I made this made this weak aura so that it pops up that icon in the middle of the screen. That was genuinely an accessibility issue for me. If you're someone who has worse vision than I do, you're going to feel that even more. A lot of people who suffer from color blindness need add-ons like this to be able to differentiate between, am I standing in the good thing or the bad thing? A lot of people who have limited hearing.
That's against the new and improved kindness TOS. I don't give a shit, man. Fucking ban me.
Need these sort of add-ons to give a visual representation for something that is otherwise a boss call-out that's just showing up in the comments.
Look, man, I don't think he's stupid. I think that the things he's saying right now are stupid. If all the things we just said are true, then what he's saying is stupid. Okay, I think Josh Allen is a very smart person in general.
That log where a whole bunch of stuff is scrolling already anyway, or sorry, in the chat log where a whole bunch of stuff is scrolling anyway. Like, these are all things that people need to be able to play the game on the same level as someone with perfect vision, perfect hearing that can see everything happening on their screen.
Yeah, and Blizzard should be developing that and not the player base.
An accessibility issue.
Yeah.
And blocking the ability for add-ons to recognize when something like that is happening is going to result in a lot of people that can no longer play the game.
No, it means that Blizzard needs to fucking step up where the community has. If they're going to block the add-ons, they have to take the ones that are for accessibility and integrate them
at the level that they've been able to play thus far. And you might say that that's a skill thing as well. You're like, oh, well, you're just bad because you don't notice this thing happening up in the top right corner of the screen. That I'm just always going to disagree with. I don't think your ability to notice that...
I agree with him. It doesn't mean that you're bad. It means that Blizzard has not relayed the information correctly.
The UI is doing something, but it's doing it in a tiny little corner of the screen. I don't think that means you're a skilled player. I think it just means you have...
He's completely correct.
Better vision than I do. That's literally all that comes down to. There's also been one other thing that I wanted to respond to on this one. I saw a lot of people saying, well, if they banned these add-ons so that they didn't have to do, so they weren't necessary, right? If they banned these add-ons so that wasn't a thing so that people couldn't use them for accessibility purposes or for, just making the fights less ridiculously tuned, for example, then Blizzard would have to fix the fights. So therefore, if they ban the add-ons, then the game will get better because then Blizzard will go ahead and fix these things. Or they have to, because
that argument is correct. They have to.
The add-ons aren't propping them up. And I understand that line of thinking, but it's backwards. Blizzard can do those things anyway. Like, they don't need to ban the add-ons first to decide that they would like to fix this problem.
No, they can, my ass. Like they won't is the problem. You're completely, backwards thinking. There's necessity versus a need, and people don't complain as much if people are silencing themselves by fixing the problem or band-aiding the problem. People are fixing the problem by themselves. They have less of a reason to complain about it. Okay, if it's not in the game and there's no way to fix it and there's no accessibility, people bitch and moan enough, they'll fucking fix it like that. Like, there'll be more people complaining about it, right? That's the natural conclusion, is that if there's no add-on to fix or band-aid the problem, then people will just innately be louder in their complaints about this problem, and then it'll get fixed, hopefully. But if you yourself, as a player, fix the issue that you're having with the game, you're not going to complain as much about it.
Of things being hard to recognize for people with limited vision or limited hearing. They don't need to ban the add-ons to realize that the add-ons are necessary for some of these fights that they're creating. They can just make they can make that change, that philosophical change.
But they're not going to, because it's more work.
And how they're approaching this design, they can make that without banning the add-ons first. And that's something that we have seen them do in the past as well, where they've made improvements to the base UI because they recognize, like Grid,
but
for example,
I like
way back in the
complaining.
TBC days.
Wah.
That was when they added in the modern.
Are you is the witch a troll? It sounds like a troll from World of Warcraft.
Raid frames in World of Warcraft. They added those in because people were using Grid and finding that to be such a much better way of seeing your different wow, where did the rest of that sentence go? Seeing your different raid frames and everything. People were seeing it like that, and they're like, this is so much better. So Blizzard basically added a version of that into the base game rather than just banning Grid. The same thing happened.
Right, so that's my point, right? Is that there needs to be a PTR for add-ons, right? Where Blizzard can see what people make and let people make shit and then go, okay, cool, we like this. We're going to put this into the base game. So that the add-ons never interact.
I got a deal for ya.
So that the add-ons in the base game never, or the add-ons in the PTR never interact with the base game. And Blizzard over time can steal those ideas. Because Blizzard, like, I understand, like, needing help. Like, Blizzard, maybe they need help. They're working on a bunch of other shit. Like, the players can help fix those problems, and then Blizzard can go, okay, cool. We see what people are working on. Let's do this and integrate it into our own game. And I think that's the best way to go about it.
And with CT Raid Assist way back in the vanilla days, when it used to be the case that if you didn't have CT Raid Assist, you literally could not see the health bars for the rest of your raid. And so Blizzard added that in as well at that point in time. Like, this is something they've done before. We should be calling for them to make these sort of changes, make these sort of accessibility changes, and make the game easier to read and easier.
Sure, and I think we are, but I think people aren't. But I don't think Blizzard sees a reason to if the add-ons exist. Like, you're completely correct, but Blizzard's not going to do that. They're just not, man. Like, they're fucking just not going to do that.
To tell what's going on in this incredibly complicated MMORPG.
You need a goddamn patch, just add-on patch. The add-on patch where Blizzard fucking turns them all off and integrates like 50 of them. Like, that's what we need.
RPG. That's what we should be asking for, not just saying ban the add-ons so that it gets more complicated. Like, that's just kind of backwards to me. Another thing that they can do that they've been doing a little bit more recently is actually actively hiding things from the API a little bit more often, making it so that add-ons can't actually see that this spell is going out. One example that comes to mind where they tried it at the very least was the Among Us fight. I forget the name of the actual encounter. In fact, I don't even remember exactly what. I think it was in Sanctum, but there was the Among Us fight, basically, where when that fight came out, You had to figure out which of your party members that you needed to have everybody DPS, but everyone was attackable, so you had to figure out who it was and attack the imposter in this case. That was something where Blizzard at least tried to block all the information about that from the API and from the UI, so that you had to converse with each other and coordinate with your raid to figure out who the person was and then attack them. Now, as I recall, players and add-on developers ended up figuring out ways to make it an automatic detection anyway, in which case it was a little bit like that experiment wasn't a complete success. But I think stuff like that would be the sort of thing that I would rather see them start leaning towards if they genuinely wanted to make the game harder for people who are using these add-ons.
The game is too hard. Don't advocate for that. The game is too hard as it is. We need to go back. We need to go back. We need add-ons to fucking die, and we need fights to be easier. That's just it.
But again,
I got about 2 minutes before I stop watching this video, because all I'm doing is disagreeing. There's no real discussion point here for me.
I don't think the solution here is to make the game harder anyway. I think the solution here is incorporate more of these things into the base game, or other ways to make things a little bit more apparent. Like just real basic stuff. Like if you get a debuff that is something that you have to react to, I don't see why the game shouldn't do something like the loss of control indicator that they ended up adding for PvP way back in the day, where nowadays, if you get stunned, there's a thing that pops up in the middle of the screen that says you're stunned. And that's how you know that you need to trinket out or whatever, if you decide you want to do that in PvP. Why not add something like that into retail for you've got the bomb and you need to run away from people? Like just pop up the icon that's like, you've got the bomb, so that people see that, and doesn't need to tell you what to do with that information. It just needs to surface that information a little bit better, because with the default UI, trying to notice that in the sea of debuffs, even with the like collapsed thing nowadays, trying to notice that into the sea of buffs and debuffs that's in your upper right of the screen is not really reasonable. And there's enough things that are going out. There's enough things that give you debuffs anyway that aren't related to that. Like, I think there are ways that they could adjust the UI itself to incorporate a lot of this more into the base game in ways that then the add-on isn't adding much more onto it.
No, I don't think that's the solution, man. Like the add-ons being available will always increase the skill level of the player base, and then the people who don't use add-ons will be at a negative regardless. So even if you do what you're suggesting, people could still use add-ons to increase the level of skill cap and makes fights even harder anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter.
Like, I look at this whole thing from, again, largely an accessibility perspective, where the reason that these things exist is because the game's UI itself is not doing very well to surface this knowledge to the player. And yes, there are definitely some where it's like, okay, this is now going to pop up a thing on my screen that tells me exactly what to do in this situation.
No, I'm done. Good video though overall. Like the talking points, but I don't agree with him at all. And we're just gonna keep talking in circles, so there's no point. But this is a video by Devil Lore, banning add-ons revisited, classics to retail and more. Overall, I think that his takes are. I think that his opinions just pushed the game into more of a difficulty curve. And the only way to get out of the difficulty curve that we're in, where the game is just too hard, is to get rid of add-ons. And I don't see any good suggestions otherwise to replace or fix that problem. So that's how I feel. But we'll be right back in a few seconds, and we'll come back and we'll play Final Fantasy.